My name is Sarah.
I'm Mikayla.
And we are your friendly podcast hosts. So this is our very first podcast.
It is.
Ever. So sometimes internet people, they're like, man, you guys could do that better. This is not the time. No.
We know we could do it better.
We know we could do it. We know a lot of people. We could probably not do it better. We know there are people
who could do it better. This is the best we can do.
This is the best we can do. And if you want to give us some constructive feedback in about like 6 weeks, we're going to probably be emotionally ready for it. Yeah. Not today. Not today.
No.
So as most of you know, I'm the executive director of Promise of Life Network. We are a pregnancy medical center based in Western Pennsylvania. So our official corporate office is Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania, which is where we are right now. And then we have 4 additional offices. So we have one in Slippery Rock, and then we have Newcastle, Sandy Lake, Mercer, and Butler, Pennsylvania. And so I've been the executive director here for 10 years. And I've actually been here a lot longer than that. I've been here for quite a while. But that's my role here at the ministry. And Mikayla is our director of international operations.
Yep. And I've been with Promise of Life for 5.5 years now. And I've been the director of international operations for 3.5 years, I think. That sounds about right. 2020.
4 years.
No. It was the end of 2020.
Was it the end of 2020?
It was the end of 2020.
2020 was a weird year.
So it's been 3.5 years.
Yeah. So we are a typical pregnancy center in a lot of ways. We provide pregnancy testing, ultrasound scans, STD testing and treatment. Everything we provide is free. We also have a parenting ministry, so we work with families who are parenting young children or expecting a child, and we provide them with diapers, wipes, baby clothes, furniture, and education regarding parenting. We also have a grief support ministry for women who have been through an abortion in their past or have been through a miscarriage to help them heal from those experiences. And then we have a abstinence education ministry. The correct term is now sexual risk avoidance, but it's basically abstinence. And we go into our local schools and we talk with public school students, teenagers, middle school and high school for the most part about boundaries, healthy relationships, and saving sex for a lifetime committed relationship, commonly known as marriage. And then we have a couple of things that make us a little bit unusual. So one of those things is what we call, I did not name it, but it's called the Sarah M. Bowen Division. And I struggle because I'm like, that sounds just really narcissistic. But that's what it's called. We have a Bible study called Courageously Pro-Life. We also have a tremendous amount of other resources. We have brochures, we have talking guides, we have like all sorts of great stuff. And that's at sarahmbowen.com. And then the other unusual thing we have is our international ministry, and I will let Mikayla talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we have what we just called the international department here at Promise of Life Network. We never named it. And the way that it came about is a little bit of a longer story that we'll tell a different time. But ultimately, what you need to know now is that we have an international reach through a chat line that I run along with a coworker, our chat line coordinator, and it is through this chat line that we are able to talk with women in other countries who are thinking about doing an abortion at home, and we are able to provide them with pro-life resources in their country, so that they can hopefully go to a pregnancy center and get pregnancy tests or ultrasounds or just talk to someone about what their options are. And that looks different for every country. Some countries don't have pregnancy centers, but we do have pro-life resources in those countries that we can connect the client with. And so that is what I oversee here at Promise of Life Network.
Yeah, and so that's a very brief overview of what we do as a ministry, but we really want to see more education in our world. What is a pregnancy center? Why do they matter? How do they operate? What do they do? What kind of people do they help? Why are they important? And so we were like, hey, you know what? We need to get the word out. We need to talk more about this. And so we thought, hey, how hard can it be to do a podcast? Which is usually sort of famous last words.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're not really sure how hard it is. We're going to do it.
It's turning out to be harder than we thought.
Yeah. But we're excited because we are going to form a community. We're excited that you're watching this or listening to this. We will have both video and audio. You can listen to it on your favorite podcast platform. You can also watch us on YouTube, and we have a Facebook group called Pro-Life Without Borders that you can join, and you can comment on the episodes. You can let us know what you think. Again, very gentle for the first several weeks. But you can let us know what you think. You can tell us what topics you want us to talk about. You can even send questions, and we'll try to answer them when we do the podcast. So we're excited about that. We decided to call it Pro Life Without Borders for a couple reasons. The big one is we're going to talk about worldwide stuff. So we are based physically in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of what we talk about will probably be related to this particular pregnancy center in this particular state. But there are also going to be times where we talk about national politics, or we talk about national news stories, or we talk about what's happening in other pregnancy centers in America. And then, of course, we'll talk about international things with our chat line and some of our friends overseas and those sorts of things as well. So our goal for you as a listener or viewer is to give you a lot of different topics related to pro-life. The other reason I liked Without Borders is because it's not just, now I realize our logo is a baby in the womb, and I think most people, when they think of pro-life, they think baby in the womb.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But pro-life is so much bigger than that.
Yeah.
Adoption is pro-life. Fostering is pro-life. End of life care is pro-life. Working with kids with disabilities, working with adults with disabilities. Like, there's so many other things. And we're not going to have, our focus is going to be the unborn child. We're a pregnancy center is what we do. But I think there is a lot of opportunity to talk about other things in the pro-life sphere and how those impact us as believers and as Christians. And that's going to be a huge part of this too. Mikayla and I are both faithful Christians. We're as faithful as we can be. Thank you, Lord. We're both believers. We're both Christians, and that's going to be part of this as well. So if you're looking for a secular podcast, this is probably
not it.
No, this is your chance to just kind of take off, find someone else to listen to. Because Christ is the center of our lives. He's the center of our ministry. He's the center of our calling, and that's gonna come out as well.
I don't understand. I have a lot of respect for everyone that does pro-life work. And it's one of my favorite things to go to the March for Life every year and see the different groups of people that are pro-life. I don't understand how those people can do it without Christ.
Right. It's very hard.
I would be tired and burnt out and irritated so fast. And I still get those things sometimes, but much faster if Christ wasn't around.
Yes. And I think there's a reason that most pro-lifers are also Christian.
Yeah.
They do tend to go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And again, I love secular pro-life. I love
Feminists
for Life. Like, there are some really awesome organizations that are extremely pro-life and are not Christian, and that's fine. But I couldn't do any. I couldn't get out of bed without Jesus.
Yeah.
Definitely could not run a ministry. Definitely could not run a pregnancy center. So this being our introductory podcast, we wanted to talk to you a little bit more about the ministry, a little bit more about who we are and how we got started. So I'll start. So I have a very intense personality, if you know me, and probably as you watch this podcast, it will come out that I'm just a very driven, focused person. And I have actually wanted to do pro-life work since I was 12, which is absolutely not normal. I read a book called If I Should Die Before I Wake by Jerry Falwell. This is not an endorsement of Jerry Falwell. I understand people have very strong opinions about him. I actually don't know anything about him other than the fact that he wrote that book. And I haven't read it since I read it once.
Yeah.
When I was 12.
Yeah.
And it was part of a competition because I'm me and I was going to win. And so we had a church library, and we could gain points by reading books from the church library. And then whoever, read the most books or the most pages, I think it was pages, got a prize. I don't even know what it was.
Was it like a personal pan pizza from
probably,
Pizza Hut?
I think Bible. I mean, it's typical youth group prize. Yeah. I don't remember what the prize was, but I was going to win, by golly. And I was in hot competition with this kid named Jacob Hilligus. And we were chewing up, we were reading every book in the library. And then at one point, the librarian, the lady that ran the library, she was like, well, if you read a nonfiction book, you get twice as many points. As if because we were all reading the Christian fiction.
That's what you gotta do.
The Amish fiction, all the random
Beverly
romance.
Lewis.
Yes, Net Oak, all of
Francine Rivers.
Yes. And so I'm reading nonfiction, man. And the only reason I picked that one is because the title was that prayer that Laura Ingalls always prayed, in Little House on the Prairie. And I was like, oh, maybe it's about Laura Ingalls.
Yeah.
It 100% was not. And my mom 100% also did not know I was reading it because it actually is pretty graphic. There's no pictures, but the descriptions of abortion are very graphic. And I remember reading it and thinking, oh my goodness, this is horrible. This is awful. I can't believe this is happening. I'm gonna grow up and I'm gonna fix this,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
And I really thought that everyone would read this book and everyone would see how awful it was, and I wouldn't even get a chance. Like it would be done, and I would,
Someone was going to beat you to
yeah, they were
it.
gonna beat me to it, and I would finally be able to actually do something, and it would be too late. The abortion problem would be solved, and there would be nothing left. I genuinely thought that. Of course, that's not. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. But yeah, I went through. And so I was like, okay, I gotta get good grades in middle school. It's 12, and then I got to get good grades in high school, and then I'm gonna go to college, and then I did every single like shadowing opportunity that I did was related to women and children.
Mhm.
And my professor, she was like, normally I would not let a student focus so like specifically on one area, but she's
Mhm.
like, you have said you wanted to do this since I've met you, so I'm just gonna
Yeah.
let you do it. And then I did my internship at the Habakkuk Pregnancy Resource Center, which was
Mhm.
is now our Newcastle office. In 2008, they hired me in 2009, and I had just kept getting promoted. I've never even been interviewed.
Do you actually work here?
I don't. No one knows.
Are you
Like
employed?
if you look at it's literally like my college resume. Like I hadn't even graduated yet.
Nice.
And no one interviews an intern. They were just like, man, someone's here to work for free.
Yeah.
Score. And I just stayed and I just never left.
There you go.
Yeah, that's my story.
You're sticking to
I'm
it.
sticking to it. So yeah, I was the assistant director for a while, which was super overblown because I was only working maybe like 4 hours a week, and then it just didn't happen. There was only two of us. So there was the director and then the assistant director.
Were you the assistant to the director?
Yeah, no, I saw that skit and I was like, man, if I had seen that at the time, I would have had a lot of questions about my status. And then I was actually the executive director for like 3 months, maybe even less, just to get us through the merge. And then then we merged Newcastle Slippery Rock together. We became like this one merged organization. And then I was the development director for a year and a half. And then since 2014, I've been the executive director. And I guess the board's happy with me because I'm still the executive director. So I'm going to keep doing that.
Sounds good.
So how'd you end up in pro-life work? Tell us. Tell our audience.
I was raised in a Christian home, and so I was raised pro-life, which I'm very grateful for. So it was something that was always there. But after college, I worked a different job, like got a job out of college. I worked that for about a year and a half. They eliminated my position, so that was fun. Yeah, yeah, and around the same time that that happened, roughly, you came to the church that I was attending at the time and spoke to our Sunday school class. And I was interested in volunteering because I had all of this time because, well,
Because you have
I
a
was
job.
unemployed. And so we were trying to figure out like a good volunteer fit. And the parenting program, like New Beginnings, really needed help at the time, but I'm not a parenting, I'm not a parent.
Right.
And so it wasn't necessarily the greatest fit. And then you needed what is now called the HRT coordinator, but at the time it was the Life Matters
Mm-hmm.
coordinator. And so I applied for that because I was like, well, I'm pro-life. You need an employee. I can do what you need to do. This would be great. And
That's
so
great.
it did. I loved, yeah, it. And you guys hired me after a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the Life Matters coordinator for all of like a week and a half. And then I changed my own title to the HRT coordinator
Yep.
because we rebranded the department. So now it's the Healthy Relationships Today department. And I did that for 2 years, 2018 through 2020. And then 2020 happened. And
Well,
and suddenly the school, so I was going into school districts. That was my full-time job, was going into the schools and talking about sexual integrity. And suddenly we couldn't do that anymore because the schools were closed. And so around that same time is when the chat line really started taking off. And so I just popped over and became director of international operations. And then I was doing both of those things for 1 year, and thankfully I don't have to do both now. I can only just do the one.
right. Which is, I like it when I only.
I like only having one job. It's nice.
Yes.
And the international department is basically 4 jobs.
Right.
So like
I think
it's
all of us. I know that I feel like I do more than one job.
I think that's how nonprofits are.
which is fine.
It's
I
fine.
feel like
I
sometimes,
maybe I would get bored if I only worked like 40 hours
or like if
at
you
one
only had
job.
one task,
Yeah, I
or
think I would.
I think I would get bored too.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah,
yeah.
no. So that's what we do. That's our day job, and we'll talk a little bit about pregnancy help in general. But I wanted to give you all, our viewers, our listeners, a chance to hear why this matters. So it's more than like, okay, so this is my story, this is Mikayla's story, this is how we got involved, this is why we do what we do, and maybe that's interesting to you, and maybe it's not. But I think it's important to think about why we do this in a more sort of broad sense.
Mhm.
Not so much like, why do I do this job? How did I get this job? Or how did you get this job? But why do
Mhm.
we do it? And what it really comes down to for me, and I tell people this all the time, like I got into pro life work for the babies, but I stay for the mothers.
Mhm.
And so when I first read that book at 12 years old, it was all about the baby. It talked about abortion. It talked about the violence of abortion. It really didn't talk about mothers much at all, to my imperfect recollection, besides talking about how to help them.
Mhm.
And when I first started here, that was kind of my thought. Like, okay, abortion is bad, abortion is evil, it's killing unborn children, which
Yeah.
I think everyone knows that. I mean, even the pro-choice side pretty much knows
Yeah,
that.
they
You
do.
know,
Yeah.
it's not a mystery. But is it good for women? And I think that if I've learned anything over the last decade and a half of doing this work, it's that it's absolutely not.
Yeah.
And seeing the women that come in who've had an abortion and seeing how they struggle and seeing their grief and seeing their challenges, even the ones that say, and some of them do, even the ones that say it was the best choice at the time, I didn't really have another option. um, it's still, there's like a grief there and there's
Mhm.
a sadness there. And I think that if I could sum up my pro-life stance in like one sentence, it would be that women deserve better than abortion.
Yeah.
And obviously babies do too.
Yeah.
And babies deserve to live. And if you can't, if that's where you are, that's fine. But women deserve better.
Yeah.
They deserve help and they deserve support. Pregnancy is not forever, and it's not a death sentence. And we as a society, as Christians, as the church, as pregnancy centers, need to be walking with women through their pregnancies and through their children's lives, not just, oh, well, it's your problem, good luck. And so I think over the last decade and more, that's been my goal, to build an organization that doesn't just say, oh, you should have your baby or you should choose life, but actually is there for them in a very tangible way.
Yeah.
So making sure that we're doing follow-ups with them, making sure that they have resources, that we're plugging them into OBGYNs and housing help and help with food, and screening for domestic violence and screening for sex trafficking. We provide STD testing and treatment because obviously, if you're pregnant and you're not expecting to be, there's a good chance that you've exposed yourself, to an
Yeah.
STD, and that's something that needs to be taken care of sooner rather than later. And then we also have like that, the parenting program is huge, making sure that they have diapers and wipes and baby clothes and furniture and education. How can I be a mom? Like, beyond just the basics of, here's how you put a diaper on or here's how you fix a bottle, but also like, how do you discipline appropriately, and how do you bond with your baby, and how do you have a healthy pregnancy, and how do you have a safe labor and delivery? And so I think it's so much more than just saying, okay, you've chosen life now.
Well, and I mean, we talk a lot about culture, and I think that's kind of the part that really drew me in. Is partly when I was hired here, I was the youngest person on staff, um, by several years. I think
Hmm.
you and I were like,
Right. It was like you,
you,
and then maybe to be the next person.
yeah, and so I was from a different generation and to some extent a different culture. And especially since I didn't grow up in the United States, like I still feel sometimes like I'm trying to grasp what's going on here because I'm so used to a different culture. But I think internationally we have lost a culture of life if we even had it in the first place.
Right.
Um, and like you said, it goes beyond just making sure that women don't have abortions, but it's making sure that we care for them. And that extends all the way up through, the high school years, making sure that we care enough about these middle and high schoolers that we're going and telling them about healthy relationships. And even, caring for the elderly. That's something that I do outside of work is, ministry to the elderly and making sure that they're cared for in a way that's pro-life. Like I never thought we'd have to get on a podcast and say that killing old people is wrong.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, we should I don't know why I'm surprised because we have to get on here and say killing babies is wrong.
Yeah.
So, of course.
Right. And I think right now pregnancy centers are under attack.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say I think. I know they are.
Yeah.
A lot of our government doesn't like what we do. A lot of our leaders, our legislators don't like what we do, and it just doesn't make sense to me. I'm like, we give out free pregnancy tests, we give out ultrasounds, we give out free STD testing and treatment. We talk about options. We do it honestly. No
Well,
one comes here thinking they're
we
going to get
give
an
out
abortion.
free diapers, baby clothes, wipes, maternity clothes. I mean,
Yeah,
furniture,
free.
food.
Right. And we're not, no one comes in here thinking they're going to get an abortion.
No.
Nobody. I think in the entire, my entire history here, we had one young woman who was angry because she got here and she found out that we weren't going to do an abortion. And our team at the time was like, hey, like we don't want to be presenting ourselves like that. So
Yeah.
like, tell us, why did you think that? Like, was it on our website? Was it on, did you misunderstand a presentation? And
Yeah.
she admitted that she didn't even really look. She just assumed.
Right.
And she kind of, it was like almost like at first she was mad and she's like, you know what? I assumed and I shouldn't have. And I didn't
Yeah.
really look at your website and I didn't really look at like any of your information. I just assumed that it was an abortion clinic. I think 1 out of 10 years being the director and that person admitting that they didn't really look.
Yeah.
We're here to just give options and information and support and resources. And I think everyone deserves that.
Yeah.
And abortion is not an easy decision. And pro-life and pro-choice, everyone agrees. I'm sure there are people out there that say it is, but most even pro-choice people would say it's a very difficult decision. And so if it is a difficult decision, then women deserve the opportunity to talk about it and discuss it and consider whether it's really right for them. And I think they deserve to do that in a facility that doesn't make a dime off of their decision.
Yeah.
And I don't get a bonus if someone chooses life.
Nope.
Yeah, of course I want them to, but even more than that, I want them to feel safe and respected, and I want them to feel like they have options, and I want them to feel like they are being honored and valued as a person.
Yeah.
So that's our goal here.
Yep.
That's it in a
That's it.
nutshell.
Yeah.
So over the next, hopefully long time, depending on how this we will talk about more about each of our divisions. We will talk more about our ministry. We'll share some stories. We'll talk about current events. We'll talk about things that we find interesting. So maybe one day you'll tune in and we won't even talk about pregnancy. We'll talk about knitting
Maybe.
or shoes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Gotta have a sense of humor to do this kind of work,
Yeah.
I think.
And honestly, like this is our podcast. Pro
Well,
life without, it says without borders. There are no borders. We can be anywhere we want. So, welcome to this ride. We would ask that you would like, subscribe, and stay tuned for future episodes. Join that Facebook group, Pro Life Without Borders, so that you can talk with us and let us know what you think. Gently, nicely, but let us know what you think. And then, as we will every time, we will wrap up with a thought, a devotional thought, a scripture, a prayer, something that is meaningful to us. And so today we're going to talk about Proverbs 24:11, which I should have like grabbed my Bible before I came up. So I'm going to try to do this from memory. My memory is not the best. But basically, it says, rescue those who are stumbling towards the slaughter.
Yeah.
And I believe the verse is longer than that. And maybe we could throw it up on the screen when we do this in post production. But that's our job as Christians, as believers, is to rescue those who are stumbling towards the slaughter. And no one is, I believe, in this day and age, nobody is more at risk than an unborn child.
Yeah.
And by connection, an unborn child and his or her mother. Because it's not just like we've been talking about, it's not just the baby. It's obviously very violent and awful for the child, but it's also going to be very violent and it's going to have long-lasting consequences for the baby. So when we talk about calling and we talk about what has God called us to do, I believe that every Christian is called to pro-life work.
Yeah.
Just full stop. And so if you're sitting there thinking, no, that's not true, I'm called to this, you are called to pro-life work because this is the greatest human rights violation of our time.
Yeah.
Just like if this was 1860, I would say that every Christian should be called to anti-slavery work.
Yeah.
Because it was the greatest human rights issue of their time.
Yeah.
And this is the greatest human rights issue of our time. And so it doesn't mean that everybody every Christian is called to full-time pro-life work or is called to
hands-on pro-life work.
right, yeah, it could be giving,
Yeah.
could be praying, could be volunteering, could be working, could be fostering or adopting, could be helping a family that's fostering or adopting. I mean, there's 100,000 ways to do it, but I think every Christian is called. And I think, and if you want to learn more about that, I recommend you visit sarahmbowen.com. We have a Bible study called Courageously Pro-Life that takes you through 12 weeks of studying what it means to be a Christian and what it means to be a pro-life Christian and what the Bible says about that. And then also contact your local pregnancy center, which might be us,
Yeah.
but it may not be. And if you live in, quick, give me a town that's somewhere else. San Diego. I don't know why. If you live in San Diego, find the pregnancy center there. Okay. If you live in Little Rock, find the pregnancy center there. Okay. So if you don't live near Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania, find the pregnancy center in your community, meet with them, talk with them, find out what makes them tick, find out what their needs are, and find out how you can get involved.
And there are a lot of resources on how to find your local pregnancy center. Heartbeat International has a directory that you could look up. CareNet, I think, has a directory of affiliated pregnancy centers. And when in doubt, feel free to email us. You can email podcast@promiseoflifenetwork.org, and we're happy to try to help you find your local pregnancy center.
Yep.
But there are, Google it.
Yes, Google pregnancy help near me, and we will pop up. Well, a pregnancy
Your
center.
local pregnancy
Your local
center will
pregnancy
hopefully
center
pop up.
will hopefully pop up. And if they don't, then they obviously need help with Google, and you can help them with that, maybe.
Yeah.
So find your local pregnancy center. Ask the Lord what He wants for you. Like and subscribe. Send us an email, join the Facebook group, and we will see you next week.